Hey YouTube, here's Heiko. Today, working on the workbench, we need to rebuild a ATE brake caliper of my 1974 R90/6 BMW motorcycle. This was technology in the 70s. A swinging caliper. Nowadays you have sliding calipers where the piston is on one side, the anvil on the other side, and then in between you have brake pads, and when the caliper comes out it pretty much slides the caliper over and squeezes the pads against the rotor. In this design here it was a kind of a pivot point, so this caliper can move this way. And then for that particular design they also had a special design of brake pads. You can see they are not parallel, they're kind of cut at an angle, and that is not uneven wear, that is actually from the factory that way. One brake pad is held in the caliper piston by means of using a little o-ring, so it's just an interference fit like this, and the other side that sits against the anvil like so has a diaper pin holding it in. That's how they attach that. It's not the greatest brake design, but you know, the bike is from the 1970s. Things were a little different back then. I'm happy that I actually have disc brake and not drum brakes in the front. So we're gonna rebuild this caliper today, put new pads on, and then I will slap it back on my bike. These are the new semi-sintered formula, which supposedly is a little bit more grabby than a organic brake pad, so this might help a little bit with brake performance, but it still is easy on your rotors. The rotors on those bikes are really expensive, like a rotor is 400 or 500 bucks, so you definitely want rather your brake pads to wear than your rotor. I will clean this up a little more and then we get going. Alright, you guys stand by. Alright peeps, I'm back. So I've already removed the old dust cap or dust seal ring and the actual seal ring in here inside the caliper. Had it already all cleaned out once. I just want to make sure we don't leave any grime, crud, and dirt in here. I use a lot of those wooden Q-tips just to get into little grooves. Make sure that I don't... Oh, there's still quite some dirt here in this groove. And then afterwards we're going to blow out with compressed air through all the openings, so the connection for the line, and also the bleeder screw has to come out. Sometimes the bleeder screws, they get a little rust pitted in the tip and then they don't seal. You can actually still see there's some rust residue. I already cleaned up the bleeder screw. You know, best way to avoid corrosion in your brake system is to bleed your brakes and you know, flush out your old fluid like every 2 years or so. That's a manufacturer's recommendation anyways. The glycol-based brake fluid that those bikes usually use, the DOT 3 or 4 or the 5.1, they are all hygroscopical, so they kind of attract water. They do get diluted by water, so you're not having individual water droplets floating around in your brake system. It's not like an oil that's separates from water. It actually just gets diluted, so over the years the water content in your brake fluid just goes up percentage wise, and then that causes corrosion. There is an alternative. This is DOT 5, which is a silicone-based brake fluid, and I guess a lot of people in the oldtimer community like to use that because it's first of all not damaging your paint. If you ever spill that on your paint job or on your engine, it doesn't ruin your paint. The other side is it has a much higher boiling point than the regular glycol based brake fluid. So in race applications where you have really hot brakes, that might be a good thing. But the downside is that it will not mix with water. So whatever water might make it past seals into your brake system will not be absorbed by your brake fluid, but will sit in your system, in your lines, as individual little droplets. And that can cause a few different things. So it can corrosion in that spot where the water droplet sits. And then it will also, when the brakes heat up really high, like let's say you're doing a hill descent and you're standing on your brake constantly, the boiling point of water is 212 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees Celsius at sea level. And so that will start boiling way before your brake fluid will start boiling, but then you suddenly have a gas bubble in your brake lines, and then your brakes will be mushy, ineffective, not very good, and that's not safe. So more or less clean. Let me blow this out real quick. Pretty windy day today, so I decided to work in the closed garage. So that's blown out. I was debating whether or not I want to put DOT5 in there, but it's really not necessary. I kind of want to stay with what BMW recommends. Most vehicles these days use glycol-based brake fluid, and it's just the most common, you know, and I know how to work with it. I have a pressure bleeder that works really well, that actually fits the reservoir of the BMW, so I can bleed this really easily. Just take the tank off and push some fresh brake fluid through little rubber bumpers here. So it's like held in place by those rubber bumpers and has a pivot right there. It's really a funky design. Ultimately, I will update this bike to dual disc brakes, and then the newer models, they have a little bit different fork legs, and you attach dual piston Brembo calipers. So it's more like a modern design. It's still an old-fashioned Brembo design, but it's much better than this. This is ultimately what's going to happen, but I have these already ready to go here. I don't want to, you know, wait another month until I have the fork legs done and the brakes done. I want to get this together and then get this bike rolling. Summer is almost over. I want to try it out. There's a little bit of some rust inside the piston, which doesn't bother me all that much. It's going to be inside the brake fluid, or it's going to be touching the brake fluid. Brake fluid usually stops corrosion unless you really have it in there for a very long time. The outside is the more important surface. As long as this has no grooves or nicks or damages or rust pitting, you're pretty much in good shape. Now you want to have this all those places where the dust seal and also the seal ring on the inside of the piston goes. This all needs to be nice and clean. Make sure you don't drop it. Concrete has this kind of damaging effect here. Let me move you up a little bit. So I have the parts all relatively clean. Let me blow this out too. And then we have the seal kit. So this is the actual seal ring that goes on the inside of the caliper. This is more like the piston ring. And then you have a dust cap, and the dust cap kind of moves with the piston. So it interfaces in this groove here in the piston, and then also interfaces with the housing. And then if the piston comes out because you're pushing your brakes or your brake pads wear, this is going to move with it. This has a lot of rubber. You just don't want to damage it when you put it in. And so when I install all those seals, I will use Bremszylinderpaste, which is brake cylinder paste, made by ATE, the same company. And you know, I probably had this thing here, this tube, since the 1980s. So the bike is from 1974. I have had this since the 1980s, working on mopeds back in the days. They still make this, they still sell it. This is just really old. It's pretty much what I think it is a silicone grease. It's pretty thin, so it's not very thick, sticky. But this is actually says it here. It's DOT3, DOT4, and DOT 5.1. Those are the 3 types of brake fluid that are all glycol based. This is compatible with that type of brake fluid. So you just give it a smear with this stuff on your finger. So we have the parts clean. Now we lube up the seal ring. Helps it stay in place, and also helps it not get damaged when you insert the piston. So you just put it in the groove, smear the stuff around a little bit. It doesn't stick out all that far. I mean, it's really not that thick of a seal ring. And then do the same deal with a smear on our finger onto this dust seal, and then we stick that. All right, let's see. Don't want to damage it. Yeah, how do we? Oh, hold on. The outer part is pretty stiff, so that doesn't stretch. Now I have to just manage to get the inner flexible ring. Let's take that out of the way. Get this inner flexible ring over the piston. I guess if we do this, that might work. That stretches, the outer part doesn't. And of course the silicone, or this ATE brake cylinder paste, doesn't help with getting a good grip on those parts. So now just need to make sure it's not folded over in like some weird way. So now you can see how this seats right in this groove very nicely. And now you fold it back up like this, and then we're going to put a little bit more of that paste. I mean, this size of, I don't even know, this is probably, it's all in milliliters. I would say it's probably 16 ounces of paste. You can do a few hundred brake cylinders before you use that up. So you can tell I haven't done that many brake cylinders. Usually, you know, if there are new ones available, I like to buy new, if it's available and cheap. On a motorcycle, BMW motorcycle, especially the vintage ones, it's not cheap exactly. So now we need to get the piston in there, and you don't want to push it in like at an angle. You want to make sure it's all straight, and then wiggle it a little bit, so you're not ruining your seal ring that's in there. It has a little bit of a chamfer. Oh, there we are. And then you just push it in, and at the same time push the dust seal into its little location here as well. It doesn't want to go. If you have to take the piston back out, the easiest, no, we don't want to force anything. The easiest is compressed air. Just make sure you don't stick your finger in there. Like if you have your finger in here and the piston comes out and smashes it right against the anvil, guess how I know that that's not really good? Because I just recently did that. and now I have a black fingernail, probably for the next few months. Let me grab a piece of wood, jam a little piece of wood in here, and just make the piston come out a little more. Okay, I'll pause you here for a second. So we have a piece of wood, a little bit of rag, like so, and then I just need to make sure my next finger is not in the way, like so. Make sure we don't lose the bleeder screw. Okay, let's see. There it comes on. So with air you can also move a brake cylinder, like a pneumatic cylinder. So I just want to make sure we get this dust seal seated in there correctly, because if that's not in, then your whole brake system is not going to be working properly. What else do we have? Do we have something smaller so we can make the piston come out a little further? We just need to make sure this ring, the outer ring, seats. Still not in all the way, but need to massage it a little more. You know, sometimes it just doesn't want to work the way you think it should. Even with lubricant and everything, and clean up, and it's sticking out on this side. What are we gonna do, guys? What are we gonna do? Yeah, I hope that we can fix this. What else do we have? Something thin. Let's use thin little plastic scraper. Okay, so we managed to get the dust seal and the piston out of its location without ripping the dust seal, so that's good. And now I'm just going to make sure there's nothing obstructing. It was, you know, there might be a little bit, oh, that's great. There might be a little bit of some corrosion here that I didn't notice earlier. It's when you get old, you get blind. Where do I have my favorite scraping tool? All right, let's be very careful. Oh yeah, there is a little bit of some crud there. That's why it wasn't slipping in. It's pretty windy. Man, it's blowing out there. Okay, let's grab a new rag. Oh yeah, so now you can see the crud is gone. It was just a little bit of some gunk left over from the old seal. All right, and now we're going to make sure we put a, let's wipe this off with a fresh rag. And put a little fresh smear of that paste on there, like so. On the piston, you see that nice round chamfer. That's the chamfer that helps you go past the piston ring, the seal ring. All right, let's do it again. Let's hope for the best. Okay, at an angle like so. And then make sure you have it all centered and straight going into the cylinder. There you go. All right, and this was the side where we couldn't get it in, so I guess I'm going to start over there. Would be great if I could push it in all at the same time. Man, this is frustrating. Oh, we got it. Now it's in all the way around. If you put too much paste, too much lubricant on it, sometimes it forms like a air seal in itself, and then you're trying to push something in, and just because of air being trapped behind the piece that you're trying to push into an opening, it just doesn't slide in at all because you're pretty much causing some air compression in there. All right, all flush, all seated, all smeary. You also want to make sure that your little pivot spot here on those ATE brake calipers is clean before you assemble it back on the bike. Let me show you that little bolt that goes through there. It's right here. It has a seal ring here. It's really cruddy dirty right now. I don't know why I even grabbed it like this. You see, it's pretty much a cam. It's a cam bolt, and what you do with that is you use the cam to adjust the caliper in its position in relationship to the rotor, so it's not off center. So when you squeeze your front brakes, your handle, and you see the caliper kind of pull the rotor one way or the other, you're trying to adjust this cam until you find its sweet spot, like its neutral spot, so it doesn't bend around on the rotor. And this adjustment has to be checked with wear as well, so when you ride 10,000 miles, you definitely used up some of the material of your brake pads, and then you have to recheck and readjust this. All right, so we're going to deal with this later. Now I'll get my clean rag here dirty. All right, that way. And then we're going to get, I think I'll better change my gloves, so I'm not putting any brake cylinder paste on my brand new brake pads that I'm about to peel out of the packaging. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay, here we go. Wow, those don't slide on really well. It's the cheap ones from Harbor Freight. And they're already in X large. Right, where's my cutting tool? So there is one. Let's get the old ones out of the way. All those brake parts to rebuild your ATE brake cylinder are relatively cheap. The brake pads, I think they were like 25 bucks. Then I have a new diaper pin. The old one is still okay, but it's a little rusty. And then my two little O-rings here. You can probably find those in your assortment box, but it's so much easier to just order them. I always order those parts from Max BMW. They have free shipping on any order, so even if you order those two pieces, they will ship it to you for free. And this is kind of cool. So now you just have to find out. This is the outer brake pad that goes against the anvil. That's why it has those steps here. And this is the inner that gets the little O-ring. So let's squeeze that over if I can. Like so. And this is actually the O-ring that goes over that chem thingy. So we don't need that. Leave it in my bag here so I don't drop it, lose it. So, and then people say that to avoid squeaking and squealing, you should put some lubricant on this O-ring. Since it's brake related, you can either use the brake cylinder paste or a copper based anti-seize, which I like to use on brake parts. So here for the O-ring, I'm just going to use this ATE stuff. Put that on there. So, and then the caliper sits over the rotor like this, and then you see that the brake has one radiused side, and that's the side that's going to go to the inside of the caliper like this. So it's following the curvature of the rotor like this. And then the other one does the same deal. Just gotta make sure you don't get any grime, grease, dirt on those brake pads. Goes in here like this, and then you grab your little diaper pin, brand new, put that in location like so. You can open it. It's probably the better idea. I sometimes just squeeze it over, but then you might bend this, and then that's probably not a good idea. But you know, I always have a problem once you have that open to get the little hook back over. Like you're kind of bending the snot out of this thing. That's why I like to just leave it close, and then since you have two relatively long pieces of wire there, just open it up and it slips right over. So that's how I do that. And then it sits like this, and I like to have the hook to the inside. So now we have new seals, new dust cap, new O-ring that holds this one brake pad in, and the new diaper pin that holds the other one in. New pads. I'm not gonna, some people believe in sanding the surface. They are fresh out of the package. I'm not gonna do anything to it. So now we're gonna put this to safety, and now we're just gonna clean this up. You know, there should definitely not be any grime, sand, leftover old grease from back in the days. When you install this, this bolt here has nothing to do with this. This is just to extract it out of the fork leg. So when it's installed, it's just held in by a little cap and a spring from underneath. And if you want to take it out, you put a, this is, I believe it's M8, screw in there and then pull it out. That's all it takes to take that out. So clean this all up. And then we're gonna yank the old O-ring off. And yeah, there's still crud and dirt and grime. And then down here as well. The cleaner this is, the better the brake caliper can move around and swing. You know, it's a swing design. I'm really wondering why they did that, because in the 1970s, when this bike was made in 74, previous model, the /5, if I'm not completely mistaken, they all had drum brakes in the front, and then the 74 R whatever, there was a 65, a 75, no, a 60, an R60, or R75, and an R90. I think they were the first ones to get disc brakes. But cars already had disc brakes, and I don't know why they went with this weird swinging design caliper instead of having just slide pins where the caliper can slide on, just like, you know, my VW bus behind me. It's a 77 and it has dual piston brake calipers in the front with disc brakes, you know. I mean, the technology was definitely already available. I just don't understand why they use such a weird design, which definitely doesn't help with brake performance. You know, everyone says, you know, as long as you have good brake pads and it's adjusted right. Yeah, and the cable that goes from your handlebar control, from your lever down to the master cylinder that's sitting under the tank, that's adding a little bit of some mushiness to the brakes. As long as that is all in good shape and clean and whatnot, you probably have relatively decent brakes, probably better than a drum brake, but still not great. You know, nothing compared to like a modern Suzuki or Honda or a modern BMW. You know, I mean, modern BMWs, they're like the cat's meow. What is it? S1200? It's like a track bike almost. It's like a road-going track bike. They have like 190 some horsepower and craziness. So that's definitely nothing for me, so I'm not an expert on those. If I mention some wrong numbers, please don't hold it against me. All right, let's try to get this O-ring out of the way, the old one. So we don't need to be worried about damaging the old O-ring, because we have a new one. But then definitely, oh my goodness, this is so hard and brittle. Hey, look at this. This is, oh, it's breaking into pieces. So this definitely has seen better days. So that's good that I ordered a new one. I almost was tempted to just leave it on there. I mean, it doesn't really, it keeps the moisture out of this contraption. So, and here's a new one, still in baggy. When I get shipments from Max, they always do such a good job in bagging this up in those little Ziploc bags. And then, because sometimes it takes a little while before I get to installing parts, I just put a description on it. So it's front brake, rear brake. There was a little felt ring for my rear brake lever as well in that bag. So they are pretty good shipping that stuff. And even though they say it takes 3 to 5 business days for their free ground shipping that they do, usually the shipments get to my house pretty quickly. Even though Max BMW is somewhere at the East Coast, I believe, or I don't know. So new O-ring and slip in, and that's it. And then the cam that goes into your fork leg that holds the caliper in place, you definitely want to put on some proper grease. Not the brake cylinder paste, but some multi-purpose grease, because this this needs to be protected from corrosion and needs to, the caliper moves around on this. So this is actually a bearing surface. You see that there is some wear. All right, guys, that's all there is to rebuilding this ATE brake caliper on your old vintage BMWs. You've got to make sure that the housing is not damaged, the inside of the cylinder is not damaged, the outside or grooved or whatever. So those two surfaces are clean. And then, the sealing is done by an O-ring. You want to make sure the groove is really clean. And then, as you saw, as we couldn't get the dust seal in there, you also need to make sure the place where the dust seal kind of interfaces with this housing needs to be clean. This is a little beat up here from probably using the wrong wrench. For now, it's going to work. I'm going to get a new one. It's no big deal. You want to have that also cleaned up. And then bleed your brakes often. It's not as hard as you think. Even if you have to do the, pull your brake lever, open the bleeder nipple. I have a bleeding bottle that hooks up to this here with a little piece of silicone hose. It's so easy. And yeah, I might make a video of this. This is how that's fixing it. So. Alright guys, that's it. I'm rambling. Bye. You guys take care.